But the truth is, I was 100% ready and committed to just, cold turkey quit wrestling. American Rana. His moment, he literally threw everything in the basket. I wrestle AR Fox, an international star. He's like, nobody gets over in wrestling without someone putting them over. Without hesitation, I could say is like my favorite opponent of all time. DUI consists of myself, Kelly Brooks, Kellen Thomas, and, William Thorne. The Secret City Soldiers, that basically consisted of myself, like, in the hoods. The only thing I remember was just seeing stars everywhere. Still with me the entire time. That represents brotherhood. He showcases intensity in a different, unique way that a lot of guys don't. He actually looked at me and was like, I looked at you as one of the OGs of New England. Just for that many to be, like, even interested and wanted to hear what I want to say or do in front of the ropes was, like, really cool. There's actually one more selfish goal, and I've never shared the story with anyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, hosted by Coach C, Chris Sanders, this is Best for Business.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Another episode of Best for Business. This one was a long time coming. Anthony Stone, man, thank you for joining me for this one.
Chris, thank you so much for having me. One thing I want to say right from the get-go is, from the early XWA days, you come into those shows way back in the day and being such a, young lad, and it's truly like a privilege to watch me grow. See you grow in the business and doing like this great podcast. That's why I personally reached out to you one time as, hey, if you could ever have me on, I'd love that, because the one thing that I really admire about like guys like you is literally watching them go from children into the early adulthood and like getting their feet wet in the business in every which way, and very humble. So I just wanted to say that right from the get-go. I'm very proud of everything you've done, and I know you're going to do great things in the future, man.
Thank you, man, for everything. I still remember one of the first times I ever saw you. What wrestling, man. One of my favorite matches ever. That match is iconic, that six-way scramble. And to see you, man, even coming back in pro wrestling, getting to call matches yours, it's been crazy, man. So thank you for everything, because if it wasn't for guys like you, I wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, it's amazing how, life comes full circle with things like that. Some things with wrestling, you can't, you can't write history like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like moments like that are particularly awesome to witness, so it's great. And I know there's gonna be more for, yourself in the future. You're going to see guys and younger growing up, and then you're going to be in the same footstep as me 20 years from now. I know it.
Thank you for everything. But let's talk about you now. I hear all the time the Karoba. So walk me through training there. I hear stories, but I want to hear your perspective on training there.
Oh, goodness. Yes. So the Karoba was a very unique atmosphere. There was a group of backyarders, because that's how I started off. Our group was known as Real Deal Wrestling. So Andre Silver was going by Onyx at the time. He was one half of the members of Elements of Suicide. He had just purchased, a wrestling ring of his own, and he was still very fresh on the independent scene. But, he wanted to give us a chance to learn the proper way, even though he was still learning at the same time. He wanted us to, introduce to a real wrestling ring, because we were still, wrestling and, like grass and, everything like that. So yeah, the Karoba was a very unique atmosphere, because you had guys that were still learning themselves on the independent level, bringing in younger guys. At the time, I was only, 16 years old. I was there for about a year and a half. By the time I was 17, I was just about ready to, get my feet wet, and I started with Yankee Pro Wrestling. So the Karoba holds a special place in my heart for that. It's definitely the very early, training grounds for me to like, get my basics foundation. As wrestling evolves and evolves and evolves,
Mm-hmm.
but like I try to never forget where I come from. That's why when my tag partner Kellen Thomas was, coming out as a Karoba, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like that hit home for me.
Yeah. So for you, when we talk about the Karoba, what made you make the eventual jump to start training there?
At the Karoba specifically,
Or in general, what made you
and
want to make that jump?
well, I wanted to get better, like to
Mm.
be, straightforward, because like it was cool to wrestle with like, my friends and my brothers and my sister was even involved like in the backyard, but I wanted to take it serious. And the only way you could take it serious was to get proper education. And so with the Karoba, that eventually led to, the Yankee school training grounds, and then going from like Brickhouse Baker, Redemption, God rest his soul. I miss him so much.
Mhm.
And Blackheart was a huge part of that. Portuguese Stallion was a huge part of that. Just learning from all these, New England veterans. So like that's the only way you ever learn is by learning from someone that's better than yourself. And I was never afraid to admit that. And I wanted to just, get better. So yeah, I went from the Karoba and then eventually just wanted to get better and better and better. I remember like my parents were never really fond of me training, with wrestling. Like all
Yeah.
parents, they don't want to see their kids get hurt. So like there was a period of time where I would just say, all right, I'm going to a friend's house, and I would like literally like run to the school and I would train, Tuesdays, Thursdays, sometimes Fridays if they didn't have shows. I was training, I was trying, my goal was to train 20 hours a week.
Mhm.
I wanted to train 20 hours a week. And then when I wasn't training, I was doing cardiovascular training. Every aspect of it, I just wanted to improve on that. So that's why it was like a very important factor for me, just to continue my education and just to get better, to try to make it like on the real independent level. And eventually I did. And it was because of those early beginnings of the Karoba and the Yankee Pro School.
So one thing you mentioned that just blew my mind, you wanted to dedicate 20 hours a week in the training. What
Yes.
was it about pro wrestling? Was that like, did you work at a time or anything? Or was that like your full priority?
I didn't have like a real full-time job. I was working
Yeah.
part-time here and there, but I was also very selfish. And I remember I had a job at one point working at Price, right? Just like bagging groceries,
Hmm.
nothing serious, but like it interfered with wrestling on Saturdays. So like
Yeah.
I remember quitting that job and be like, no, I want to do this. So like, whereas like I didn't have a lot of money to do it, like the
Hmm.
story of every wrestling starting their journey, I just wanted to dedicate as much time as I could because I didn't feel that, training, only 3 or 4 hours at a time was like enough for me. I wanted to like really like excel and, take every moment that I possibly could. Like I joke around all the time in my early backyard days is like I would say that like I would write down notes of like what I learned in that classroom, whether it be like headlocks or things that they, were specifically talking about. Like I would try to take notes because I took it as a student and I was learning.
Yeah.
So that's the approach that I took, and I felt like it certainly helped me a long way for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And one of the names you mentioned too, I want to talk about. Tell me about Mike Edwards.
Mike Edwards, yes. So in the backyard wrestling days that we were talking about, I spent a lot of years in his backyard wrestling.
Hmm.
Um, some of my more like memorable moments, just because like we were such a small group and we wanted to collaborate this little wrestling show that we were putting together. And in our eyes, it was like the best thing ever. Like,
Yeah.
and we were very proud of it. And like, we actually had like meetings. Like we were a really close knit group at that time, so like we really had meetings on Wednesdays and we talked about the show, and we actually like did a little like film study. We would watch the show on Saturdays afterwards and just say, "Oh, like that was awesome." I mean, we were marking out for ourselves for the most part, but
Hmm.
like because you don't really know what you're doing, right? You're just still
Yeah.
just like with the boys and the girls, and just like, "Yeah, that was
Yeah.
great." Like
Yeah.
our vision was like, "Oh, but looked good on camera." That was right, no matter how dangerous it was. But of course, like you get well in tune with reality and health, because
Hmm.
like that's when I had like my first like two real concussions during those backyard wrestling days. And then I didn't suffer a major injury until years and years later, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But like I was very fortunate that in my very early upbringings that the two concussions were the more serious like I had. But yeah, I was 16 years old. I had two concussions, so that wasn't the best way to start for
Hmm.
sure. But Mike Edwards, man, going back on him, um, it's another one that's gone, so God rest his soul too. I miss him every day, and every time I drive by his house it kind of like brings a small tear because I remember all the like happy memories. That
Hmm.
man used to, he was very gifted, not just in the ring but outside the ring. Another individual from New England that was very humble in that excuse me, he was very gifted with graphic design, and he used to actually create coloring books with us on it, and he never asked a dime. He says, "Hey,
Wow.
just have it. Like you guys could do whatever what you want to do with it." And like it was just amazing because he was so talented with that. And like he let us wrestle in his yard for years for free and never charged us one penny for it. So those were the very early stages of like that New England veteran kind of bringing us like under the wing and like learning. We actually dedicated one show to him. Mike Edwards tribute show in his backyard. And what was really special for me was I actually had the privilege of wrestling him.
Wow.
And he didn't know about it. That's the funny part was we kind of did like a shoot promo on him. He legit didn't know about it. And we did this whole thing. I was the heel, he was the good guy, and he came out
Mhm.
and he beat me up. And then afterwards, he was like, all right, we're gonna wrestle. And me being young and eager, like I think like you have to go A B C D, like
Yeah.
the old macho man philosophy. That was
Yeah.
me. I used to think like I had to like spot one, spot two, spot three, spot four, but he was like the first guy. Was like, no, we're gonna do it in the ring.
Wow.
Everything was in the ring. So that was like my first like real lesson. And like, all right, here we go, kids. Like just listen to me and do that. And I'll never forget him, and I'll never forget that experience. And yeah, yeah, Mike Edwards is a beautiful man, and I miss him.
So when we talked the backyard and all your wrestling growing up, were you always Anthony Stone?
No, and I'm actually glad you brought that up
Yeah.
because I'll gladly share the story and
Okay.
how I became Anthony Stone. The original name was Bloodstone.
Hmm.
Um, many people think like I took that from like the classic Stone Cold Steve Austin shirt, blood from a stone thing, and the story's not as cool as that. Like all it really came from was like, um, I was wrestling and I got hit with a stick. It was more like a twig, and it
Hmm.
made me bleed, and the blood fell on a stone. So that's
Wow.
how Bloodstone was born.
Wow.
But the transition to Anthony Stone, um, and the Bloodstone character is kind of a schizophrenic, like loose end, like was a very paranoid type of individual. Um, you know, but I never carried that once I started to get into the independent ranks. I kept the name Bloodstone because I wanted to keep that lineage. But I'm gonna give credit to Jose Perez for this
Nice.
story because he sat me down to the VFW Hall in Fairhaven, Massachusetts, where I was doing a lot of my wrestling at the time. And he had like a legitimate conversation. Was like, all right, so tell me like what's Bloodstone? Because I'll tell you who I think Bloodstone is. When I think of the name Bloodstone, I think it's this big menacing individual. And not to knock yourself down, but you're not that. You're 5'8". I was 155 pounds, like dripping wet at the time.
Hmm.
So I wasn't like anything menacing to describe that description. And he was absolutely right about that. So I decided to go with Anthony Stone. It's legit my middle name, my shoot middle name, Anthony.
Wow.
And so in Stone, I wanted to keep something from that backyard
Hmm.
era to kind of carry with me. Because again, like I try to, you know, I try not to forget where I come from. And
Yeah.
so like that's why I kept like that's where Anthony Stone, like where I transitioned from Bloodstone to Anthony Stone.
Wow. That's crazy to hear. So at one point you were just Bloodstone?
At one point, I was Bloodstone for actually many years. Like, and it was a fun time. Like, I
Hmm.
definitely, even with the the psychology of that, like being schizophrenic, like I bought books, and I was reading up on it, so that way I can like actually mimic the body language right and like the thought process. Because again, I try to take everything as serious as possible and not just like portray like a character. I wanted to like believe in it and live in it. And so like I studied up on that and did my best to, and in every aspect, like in the ring, outside the ring, like in the mind, even though I didn't know it at the time, I certainly like tried my best in all elements to um really make everything kind of come together.
Yeah, so another thing you talk about, even when I talk to you for commentary notes, one of the things that you make it known, obviously, you're a big family guy. So walk me through balancing family with pro wrestling.
Uh yes. For those that don't know, I do have a large family. I have my four horsemen and my two daughters. The first three were pretty much like around like 5 years apart from each other, and then the last three just kind of, came out rather quick, and that's all in God's will, like we
Mhm.
can't control how that works. But yeah, um, this past September, marked 22 years for us.
Wow.
Um, and so with that being said, like the one thing I will stress for, wrestlers with emerging families or, families down the line or, significant others in general, because, the road we go on, it can be very tasking, not just on yourself, but more on them. You're asking your significant other to, go away for a day, maybe two, maybe three, depending on, your bookings. And, like there's at times there could be a lot of questionable, um, aspects with that. Unfortunately, for a long time, wrestlers have been, known as party animals and not so like loyal. And
Mhm.
so, like you need a very trusting partner in order to be successful in wrestling. And, some people decide to, be single their career. And some people, like myself, are very fortunate to find someone that you have that support. Because if you don't have a supporting spouse, like that goes a long way, like nobody wants to go home and sleep by themselves. And
Mhm.
so, if you're on the road all the time and like you just are not respectful to your partner, it's not going to last very long. And having a family, um, some people know the story, some people don't. I talk about and dab about here and there. But the truth is, like when my firstborn, Xavier, when he was born, I was 100% ready and committed to just, cold turkey quit wrestling.
Wow.
Um, well, because once again, you hear all the stories of, like, wrestlers living their lives and,
Mhm.
sometimes getting cocked up in things that are, not exactly healthy for a relationship, never mind a child in that relationship. And, whereas like I was still maturing myself, I was learning a lot about being a man after having him. Like that unconditional love you have for children, it's impossible to describe.
Mhm.
And I was only 19 when he was conceived, 20 when he was born. So I was still very young, still very immature in a lot of ways. Um, I'll admit it took me a long time to grow. And with that, having that supporting spouse there to be there with me, to
Mhm.
watch me grow through my faults and my positives and my negatives, and but um it takes a lot. And so I was ready to quit cold turkey. I said, no, I want to, as much as I love wrestling, I want to, be a dad because that was also very important to me. And she shot it down.
Wow.
I was, I think I maybe lasted, I don't know, like 2 months, and that's even pushing it. Where she's like, nope, you have to go back out to wrestle. You're miserable. You're not yourself. You need to go back to do it. So I always give her all the credit for, pushing me to go back because, I had that support.
Mhm.
Even though I was one in my heart, I was 100% ready to just quit it all and be devoted to being dad. She says, no, you could be you could be dad, but I still want you to do this because of how passionate you are about it. So yeah,
Wow, that's crazy. So, like you said, you wanted to put in 20 hours a week. In your mind, you just focused on pro wrestling. So, tell me about trying to learn and grow outside of New England because New England, there's a lot of opportunities, but there's pro wrestling everywhere.
absolutely. So like with that, you know, there was a point that I felt I was getting stagnant. Like I was just kind of doing like, the same circle of
Mhm.
promotions, and not that it was necessarily a bad thing. But again, in order to grow, I had to, get out of my comfort zone, and I wanted to grow outside of that. So there are two individuals that I want to take the time to thank as far as give me an olive branch,
Mhm.
to join in the ranks. Um, the first one is Drew Cordeiro,
Mhm.
the one of the founders of Beyond Wrestling.
Yeah.
And the second individual is Mike Quackenbush.
Wow.
Because at the time Chikara was a very, very hot promotion
Mhm.
during that time. And so I actually reached out to him via email and
Old
said,
school, love it.
old school, yep. And I
Yeah.
said, hey, this is who I am.
Mhm.
I would like to know if, I can come down to one of your training sessions, like how much does it cost, this and that. And, he relayed all the information to me. And, I remember talking to like, the group of wrestlers that we were training with at the time. And I was like, hey, I'm interested in going, to, Pennsylvania. And if anyone wants to come with me, that'd be great. But I want to extend that invitation. And the only one that was in the room at that time. I'm sure there were other individuals that they were aware they might have joined, but the only
Mhm.
one that was in the room at that time that actually came with me was Eric Dillon.
Wow.
Yep. So me and Eric Dillon trucked down to Pennsylvania, and we formally meet, Mike Quackenbush, and they had just done a show the day before. So the very first thing we did, and this is what I loved about it. The very first thing we did, we set up the ring.
Nice.
We set up the ring, and like we set up the ring, and then we did like an hour and a half of cardio, like very old school, like calisthenics. Like it was, I loved every minute of it. And then we trained for another like 2.5 hours, 3 hours after that. Um, but yeah, so Mike Quackenbush, like, extended the olive branch for that. And then with Drew Cordeiro, um, I had met Drew Cordeiro. At the time, I had not a lot of people noticed, but I actually had a wrestling gym in the South End of New Bedford.
Hmm.
It was kind of short-lived. It was around only for about 3 years, but at that time, he actually rented out that space, and he was, before Beyond Wrestling was the thing.
Yeah.
He was bringing in wrestlers together, and like they were doing what Beyond was, just in a small capacity at the time.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
that's how I met him. And he was like building something more in
Hmm.
Elyria, Ohio, where they actually really started the MySpace channel and started going thing. And I just every single aspect of wrestling, I try to keep an eye on all those things. And so with Drew Cordeiro, I was like, hey, I really love what you're doing. If the opportunity is there, I would like love to do it. And this was in Elyria, Ohio. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
This was a 16-hour ride
Yeah.
from New Bedford, and I was like, I want to do it. I want to do it. So he provided me that opportunity, and he was like, the only thing I ask, I want to ask you to pick up some guys on the way. So
Hmm.
that's what I did. I picked up like the New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. I picked up Eric Corbis.
Oh yeah.
I picked up Chris Dickinson,
Wow.
and I picked up his tag team partner, Jaga. He wasn't
Wow.
known as Jaga at the time,
Hmm.
but I picked them all up. So that was our car ride going there. And so that's kind of how the very beginning of like my run with Beyond Wrestling started, was just saying, hey, like I'll gladly go up to Elyria, Ohio, and we had a whole weekend of tapings. And then, a few months later, they had another event of tapings, and I was invited to come back, and I went back, and I went back, and I went back. And so like that's how I met Drew Cordero, and that's how my start with Beyond Wrestling started.
So first, I want to talk about Chikara. So how long was the drive there?
Um, Much shorter. I
Yeah.
want to say it was about 5 hours. I want to say
Uh,
it was about a 5 hour drive. Yeah.
yeah, and I hear people talk about Mike Quackenbush, but when you went, like, what were like some of the top things that you learned from him?
Oh God. We can have a whole podcast
Yeah.
just on that, because
Yeah.
he was very, very insightful. Character development and storytelling. That those are things that he has a master class in, and
Hmm.
there's big reasons why WWE brings him in from time to time for that. So it's impossible for me to say like everything I might have learned from that.
Yeah.
But like you know, I one of the biggest things I took from, Mike Quackenbush was to like, be aware of the crowd that you're performing for.
Hmm.
Because we have like all types of like different crowds that we're working for. He always said like what you might do in town A is not going to work in town B. So he was very big on experimentation and, learning a lot about yourself. So, he gave so many, people opportunities in that venue. But that was probably one of the biggest things I took. Of course, like, the lucha libre aspects of it, like I really enjoyed, and, learning like proper holds and techniques. And the other thing that I want to give credit for is evolving storytelling within uh you know the structure of a match.
Hmm.
That was another thing that he was huge on, as far as like acting quirks and adding little trinkets here and sprinkles, as he would like refer to sometimes. Yeah, he was and still to this day he's very, very gifted to the ring.
Hmm. Oh yeah. So another person I want to ask you about, I didn't realize, I knew you were familiar with, I didn't realize you had some chemistry with, was Brandon Webb. So first I want to learn about the tag team, the Air Devils, and then I want to learn about Anthony So. Is this your first ever casket match you have?
My first and only casket
Okay,
match.
okay. Yeah.
Me and Brandon Webb, This is dating back before I made it outside of New England, so we're kind
Yeah.
of backtracking a little bit. But yeah, Brandon Webb. I actually went to high school with his older brother,
Wow.
and I was there for the day that he debuted in Yankee Pro Wrestling. He was like this young kid. He was very, very nervous, and like, not that I had that much more experience than him, but I kind of went up to him and was like, "Hey, we're gonna be all right. Like, I love your mask," because he
Mhm.
was wearing like, what I thought was a cool mask. Many people thought it was a ripoff. It was like more like a Venom, like
Okay. Yeah.
Spawn look.
Was
But
he
I
always Devil's Reject? Was that like
no,
his gimmick or whatever? Or no?
no, 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 no. So
Okay.
for the longest time, he was known as the Creeper.
Okay.
He was known as the Creeper, and so this is his early stages of his career when he was like the Creeper. But like it was his idea where
Hmm.
he was like, hey, like let's you wrestle, I wrestle, let's become a tag team. We could travel together and we can like go on groups and like yeah, like that's great. Like because traveling alone sucks, but a
Yeah.
lot of times you got to do it. But he was like, yeah, he was like, hey, let's go train. I was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's go train together. We'll wrestle together, and we had some success. Doing that. We won tag team gold in NCW.
Hmm.
That was a pretty cool experience, because I was one of the first times I had to wrestle with Mike Bennett.
Nice.
Because like, that was a really cool experience. To wrestle with him, that early on in my career, and still very early in his career as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like that was like a lot of fun,
Hmm.
and that was our goal, was just to have fun. The casket match came about like many years later. That took place in Lucky Pro Wrestling.
Hmm.
And we were provided an opportunity to kind of have like a program with each other, which it's always like it's cliche to say a lot of the times, but it's always better when you wrestle with your friends, right?
Yeah,
Because
everyone says that.
yeah, because you don't really like, like you hit a little harder and you make things a little more, because like it's more of a pride thing. But yeah,
Hmm.
like so like it's great when you're working with like one, because you don't like a lot of people don't have like real friends in wrestling. Like if you can make real true friends in wrestling, then that's a blessing. A
Hmm.
lot of times you're just a colleague, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like for me and Brandon, like we really clicked on a lot of levels. So when we had that casket match, which I think still, some fan, I mean, you remembered it, which so
Yeah.
we definitely left like a mark in a lot of people's memories for that, which is the goal in wrestling.
Hmm.
And it was cool. It was unique, and like that was like one of those like experiences where we just went out and we had a lot of fun. Like it
Yeah.
was it was very cool to do that. You know, I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll have another casket match. I
Yeah.
I, I don't know. Like I don't think he's truly retired. I know he doesn't wrestle a lot as
Yeah.
well these days, but like we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I remember when I first started watching you in like XWA and Y. I remember I would go into school like Monday to like Friday, like just brag because like I was the only wrestling kid. And I remember years ago I was like in like a language arts class or something, like seventh grade or eighth grade. And I remember that match I came across on YouTube. I was watching a bunch of your matches one day.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I sometimes forget of the content that's on YouTube, and
Mhm.
every once in a while I'm reminded of that, and that's one of the beautiful things on YouTube is you can kind of go back and watch some of your matches and whatnot, and when people find you, like it's like, oh, all right, like it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely neat.
Yeah. So the next guy I wanted to ask you about wrestling was AR Fox. Now, was Beyond Wrestling, was this for?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was like the first. So I don't want to say it was the first live show because the first live show took place in Connecticut in a building that was beyond scorching hot. Oh my
Mhm.
God. They did a doubleheader with a interspecies wrestling, and I'll never forget that building. No air conditioning in the middle of the summer. Oh, it was brutal in there. But this show, American Rana, was the first American Rana,
Yep.
which was like, basically Drew Cordeiro's like his moment. He literally threw everything in the basket, like, all right, this is it. This is do or die. Like
Hmm.
this show has to succeed or it's not going to happen anymore. And
Yeah.
that was one of Drew's favorite sayings is like, I'm putting everything in. I'm putting everything in. So let's hope we do well. And
Yeah.
so with that with that show in particular, um, there were three, separate main events. And
Hmm.
so you had these like, basically these international stars, Johnny Gargano, you had Biff Busick, and then you had AR Fox, right? and then the New England guys that were representing against these three calibers was myself, JT Dunn, Biff Busick, who wrestled Eddie Edwards. Excuse me, I want to correct
Nice.
that.
Yeah.
So, I wrestle AR Fox, and before like, let's AR Fox at this time, he's an international star,
Hmm.
legitimately. Like, no disregard to Johnny Gargano and Eddie Edwards, because Eddie Edwards was doing great things in Ring of Honor. He held a championship. AR Fox was like, in my opinion, like, he was like a Dragon Gate, like the legit
Yeah.
Dragon Gate champion. And like he was like carrying one of the Evolved championships, I believe, at the time. And I'm wrestling him. I'm like, this is how I felt. Like our
Yeah.
our our statures are like, bro, like we had similar styles in wrestling, of course. He's way more athletically gifted than I am, but like
Hmm.
I was able to keep up with him and I was confident in that. And I think that's why we were paired together. But like the the biggest opening moment was like when I was informed like, hey, like you're going over. Like I
Wow.
didn't I didn't believe it. Like I
Hmm.
thought I was being ripped. And I went to him and I legitimately like approached him like trying to get his blessing, like, hey, are you okay with this? Like
Hmm.
I don't want to have anything interfere with like, your standings with your promotions. He's like, no, no, listen, like, you know, nobody gets over in wrestling without someone putting them over.
Hmm.
And I was like, just like, like mind blown with that because, like, again, like from my perspective, a guy of his stature, like, he didn't have to do me the honors, not
Hmm.
whatsoever. Like, he's like a well-made man at this time. So, like, yeah, he doesn't have to do me any favors at all. It was a favor for Drew, but it was more of a favor for me,
Yeah.
And so, like, I remember like talking to him about like, doing the classic Bret Hart, because I'm a huge Bret Hart mark. Like for
Hmm.
those that know me, Bret Hart's my all-time favorite. So like, you know, when I approached him, I was like, hey, listen, like, would this be an okay finish for you? Because like I think it'll like really like stun the crowd. And I think that's what Drew wants. So like we did the classic like sunset flip. I hooked the legs and hooked the pin over.
Yeah.
And like it got the reaction that we wanted. And he was 100% cool with it. And like to me, that was like the perfect example of like first class professionalism.
Hmm.
And taking someone like myself who was just trying to grow up the ranks and was like, yep, I'll have no problem doing the honors for you. Anybody can go over at any time and it's not going to affect your status. And that's like the biggest lesson I took from that, which, is huge. We all know that in professional wrestling, especially on the independent level, there's a lot of egos. Everyone's got an ego. There's,
Hmm.
there's, there's, there's no denying it. But like, he was just humble enough to do me that favor, and I'll never forget that. And I still preach that lesson to this day, where it's like
Yeah.
wins and losses, they don't matter because I bring that exact example up. Like AR Fox didn't have to, like let me win. And yeah, sure, wrestling's predetermined or whatever, but like to me, it was an honor for him to do that for me. And
Yeah.
so like, that was the big lesson I took from that, and that's a lesson I carry with me for as long as I'm gonna wrestle. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? In this stage of my career, especially where I'm like, hey, I have no problem. Like there's never I never had an issue anyway, but
Hmm.
like it just meant that much more to me, especially after that experience with AR Fox.
Wow. Now I know you said you couldn't believe when you found out you were gonna go over, but do you remember finding out you were wrestling AR Fox?
I I don't remember the exact moment.
Hmm.
I know that like, the card was kind of like talked about here and there, and like, those three names, like, the Johnny Gargano, AR
Hmm.
Fox, and Eddie Edwards, like they were the, big showcase guys being brought in to draw and stuff like that. But then, like, Drew wanted to pair off three New England guys in hopes to again try to like propel them. And, like I think he did a terrific job with that overall. But like I don't remember the exact moment. I just remember seeing the graphic, and that's when I was like, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
Like this is like, and like I think anyone could have gotten that opportunity, but like maybe that was Drew's way of thanking me for the dedication that because when I went out to Elyria, Ohio and did all the tapings, like I never asked for anything.
Hmm.
Like to me, that was like an opportunity to learn and grow from guys from outside my area, network and things like that. And like, you know, I never really, I never really asked because I was just so grateful at that time, like to be with this like in this locker room with all these world class like athletes and to see like how Beyond Wrestling is now, like it's incredible to see how many guys still to this day are getting like opportunities to to work with WWE, AEW, Ring of Honor, all because of like that big platform that he has. So like I'll always be grateful for that.
Yeah, so when we talk Beyond Wrestling, I think you wrestled him for Beyond. It could have been other places. Tell me about wrestling Dave Cole.
Oh, Dave Cole. Yeah, we we did quite a few matches in Beyond Wrestling with so my love for Dave Cole, right, is like so universal because I spoke early in this podcast about, branching out of New
Mhm.
England. He inspired me to do
Nice.
that because he was a New England guy who went out to Ohio and he was wrestling for a promotion that was hybrid wrestling.
Hmm.
And like I remember watching like all the hype videos on YouTube, all the hype videos and all the music videos and watching him like win like the championship and like it really propelled him to like a whole different, atmosphere. And, you know, wow, he's a New England guy that branched out and he's doing so much better for himself. That's the real motivation of what got me out of New England was Dave Cole.
Nice.
So like when I had it was funny because we were running well not we excuse me but Beyond Wrestling was doing secret shows at one of the RWA chop shops at the time, and so the secret shows were just that like no matches were announced, nothing was happening, and Drew provided an opportunity for some of the boys to like book the show. And I remember this particular show, Dan Barry was booking. Me and Dan Barry had kind of like a really cool, like nerdy, like relationship. Like we actually played a lot of like Magic the Gathering together in like
Nice.
hotel rooms and stuff. So Dan Barry's another great New England guy, but he was booking that show and asked if we wanted to pair together, and I was like, yeah, we've never done it, so it'd be a first time thing. He's like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
So right from that first pairing, we I like to compare my philosophy with Dave Cole with RVD and Jerry Lynn. And the
Nice.
reason why I say that is because when you hear like their interviews about working with each other, and they all they say is if you want to see the best of RVD, I'm gonna showcase a match with Jerry Lynn. And when they were working together, they literally like brought the best out in each other. They want to push it, and they wanted to like just have the best match possible without any limitations and explore the imagination kind of thing. So whenever I talk about my chemistry with Dave Cole, like that's how I could sum it up is that like we really, embodied like, because he's an artist. So like
Hmm.
we really embodied of like using the ring canvas and showcasing our art. Um, so all the opportunities and all the times that we wrestled, and it just like it's magical every single time. I can't like pinpoint one match of mine that's a favorite because they're all my favorites. Dave Cole, probably, without hesitation, I could say is like my favorite opponent of all time because
Nice.
I know that if I'm gonna go on the ring with him, it's gonna be like one of the best matches I can have, and like matches that people remember, what people will talk about, because they'll bring up the best of seven series and like, oh man, like a lot of people that are wrestling now. I won't mention names, but like they would go back to those matches and say those matches were incredible, and like yeah, I'm very proud of those matches. So Dave Cole is very special, and I love you.
Yeah, Dave Cool rules, man. Now, when I was doing my research on Anthony Stone, we're gonna talk about DUI. We talked about Brandon Webb, but I
Okay.
had no idea. Tell me about being a part of the Secret City Soldiers.
Okay. So well, the Secret City Soldiers is a little bit different from DUI.
Hmm.
And I'll kind of explain that. So, DUI, right? It consists of like myself, Kelly Brooks, Kellen Thomas, and William Thorne, and
Hmm.
like the four of us, you know, not so much Kelly, but like the three of us, like we all came from that Karoba school, right? And so, kind of like similar philosophy that I have with Brandon Webb, like, hey, like let's kind of like do something like together and let's like have fun with it and let's like be a stable. And the whole like DUI thing, like we wanted to have like a cool acronym that like somebody could be familiar with. It was stood for destruction under impact,
Yeah.
but we wanted something, oh, DUI, and people can kind of catch on to it, and like New World Order and
Yeah.
NWO, like something like that. So that was this was like we're kind of backtracking again, which is
Mhm.
perfectly fine. But
Yeah.
this was like before I branched out, outside of New England, and a lot of the BFW shows in Fairhaven that we were wrestling at the time. DUI was like spot showcased a lot there. Of course, Kellen and Will, they ventured off as a tag team, and they went off to like more like other places. Like they were more like the of the tag team.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like I had great chemistry with with Kellen, of course, because we still team here and there, but him and Will like a whole like the whole different atmosphere. Like they could finish each other's sentences and
Wow.
like catch up. Like like they might have not talked for a couple of years. I mean, they talk daily, but like
Mhm.
it's that type of brotherhood where it's like they have like a real strong thing. So like, but all four of us was collectively was just like being real life friends, wanting to do something cool and having the platform to do that when. So yeah, a DUI is great, and obviously, like with me and Kellen still teaming up from here that now and then, which is always special to me because you're talking like the like mid 2000s when like that
Mhm.
whole thing started, and here we are in 2025, and like DUI is still being mentioned. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like. It's awesome for that lineage to go as long as it has, and for people still interested, intriguing, and seeing that. So for me, that's why it's so special. So now the Secret City Soldiers,
Wait,
right?
before we go to the Secret City, I have one
Oh,
question about
okay. Oh,
DUI.
sure.
Who created that theme song? That is
So
one of my favorite things about. I love that theme song.
the theme song is terrific. So at the time, my sister's fiance was involved with another individual who were trying to upstart like their rap careers.
Yeah.
So being an independent wrestler and there being an independent music
Yeah.
artist, they wanted to do us a favor by, hey, like we know you guys personally, like we have no problem putting a track together for you, and at the same time, like it got played, and like I remember bringing some of the CDs and trying to sell them at shows because
Wow.
you know what I mean, one back scratches the other, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying. But yeah, Revelation, he still makes music to this day. I
Mhm.
think you can find him on like Amazon Music and Spotify and all those
Yeah.
things. um but Catalyst was the other individual. I'm not sure if he's still like producing anymore. He could be, but I'm just so like out of it. But those were the two individuals that kind of put the song together for us. And yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. Like I'll definitely play it when I'm at the gym sometimes,
Yeah.
or like on the road. Like yeah, it's amazing hype music.
Yeah.
And what was so unique about it was like only a handful of guys like only had custom music.
Yeah.
So that was the other charm about it, was like we have like legitimate custom made music that was like it was different. It was like it was very cool. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very cool.
Because nowadays, like, there's AI that definitely does theme songs, but like even
Mm,
back then, like yeah, like you said, maybe like five or six, not even had those.
right. Yeah, not a
Wow.
lot of people had like legitimate, custom entrance songs, and we were one of the very few, like off the top of my head in that era. It's hard to pinpoint. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure if like I recall it maybe later on I could, but it was very rare. Like
Yeah.
like you mentioned, now they have like artificial intelligence that
Mhm.
does it, and there's more like mainstream performers that offer that service. It wasn't
Mhm.
readily available like at that time. You know what I mean? Unless you knew somebody, but that was
Yeah.
really it.
Yeah, that is crazy. So, like I was saying before I interrupted you, the Secret City Soldiers.
Yeah. So the Secret City Soldiers, right?
Yeah.
That basically consisted of myself like in the hoods,
Mhm.
Chris Pyro and Davey Cash. Um, we were like eventually paired together because we were all from New Bedford. We all came from like that, Yankee school top rope class, and we were all just in the same place. And, like there was a point where it's like, hey, let's just put these guys together and, have a lot of fun. And even before, beyond wrestling, like we were like, like teaming up here and there, doing, 6-man tags and like other promotions and stuff like that. So like, our chemistry wasn't like out of the ordinary whatsoever. It was just like riding the bike and let's go. We
Hmm.
all knew each other's styles. We all knew how to get like, the best out of each other. So yeah, the Secret City Soldiers was like, definitely like another fun time in wrestling. And when you have like those opportunities to work with your friends, like that's when you have like the most fun out of it, obviously.
Yeah.
A lot of people like, yes, being a professional wrestler, independent wrestler, it is a job, but you do find enjoyment in it when you have those chances of working with your friends. And, sometimes that's not always the case. Like people have their upbringings where, the people they started with, they kind of like leach out of it and they continue to go on and do their own things. But, you know, there are plenty of stories that I've shared with you so far
Hmm.
that I've been blessed with that opportunity. And yeah, the Secret City Soldiers, that was a fun experience.
Yeah. So the next match I wanted to ask you about, tell me about wrestling Paul London.
Paul London. Um, so Paul London is like a very, humorous individual,
Yeah.
who's very laid back and, like he's very serious, but he's not serious at the same time.
Yeah.
So, like it's very easy working
Hmm.
with Paul London because like he doesn't make it seem like he's so good at what he does. He doesn't make it seem like he's work, you
Yeah.
know? So like one of the things that like I grabbed from him was if I'm working with like any like talent, like that's what I hope to accomplish. Like I don't
Hmm.
want, anyone that's working with me to think like, oh, it's too much work or I mean, I want them to put in the work, but I don't want it to like be an overwhelming experience. Like when I try to, structure matches together and, like throw spaghetti against the wall. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorites. All right, let's throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks and, kind of go from there. But like, I think like wrestling Paul London, like that was one of the biggest lessons I learned from him, you know, um, being laid back and like, having a match structure put together that wasn't so stressful because he's not stressful. Like he's so easygoing. So like, working a true class professional like that, like you can't, you love being around him because like it's just like you just like ooze up all his aura. He's such a positive individual. I wish we had more of that, like
Yeah.
people that were so laid back. Like, I mean, yeah, I take wrestling seriously. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
like he does as well. But he was able to like kind of put his walls down, especially with like younger guys. And like he's also another individual that's like so giving. Like
Hmm.
he's always up for like trying to have like, you know, moments,
Yeah.
not just like great matches, but moments that people will remember. So that's another thing that I can, like give credit for.
Yeah. So some of the stuff you've been saying, like I strive to have the mentality that you have with pro wrestling. It's the passion that sticks out for me now. The next thing I want to talk to you about, I didn't even know if you wanted to talk about it first, but you mentioned it. Walk me through. I think I was in like eighth or ninth grade. I remember Monday I was in school and I see the message. Walk me through the match where the injury goes down.
Yeah. So the big injury, like we were
Mhm.
talking earlier in this podcast, is like, I was 16. I only had, two concussions. I had never broken a bone in my body from there, and I mean, my matches with Dave Cole alone, I did some pretty extreme things.
Yeah.
But like, I was very fortunate and blessed and healthy. So I wrestled Rex Lawless, and this was for, a show for Beyond
Mhm.
at one of the Chikara schools. And I want to clarify something because the reports falsely reported how the injury occurred. Um, it didn't get brought to my attention later on in life, but like several news outlets, the dirt sheets, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the dirt sheets. But anyway, they had said that like he had like jumped from the top rope and double stomped my chest,
Mhm.
which I'm like, no, that is 100% not what happened. I took a second rope leg drop from this individual. Now, for those that know Rex Lawless, he is a huge man.
Yeah.
He is
He's a
he
big
is
guy.
a big guy. He's
Yeah.
very, very muscular. But he was, showing more of his athletic side, and I had trust him. We had worked plenty of shows together, and did some matches here and there. It was our first singles match, but I'm like, yeah, dude, you can. What? It's a second rope leg drop. Like, what's to think of it? And then as he jumped, the rope rolled, and his trajectory was just off, and he just legitimately crushed me.
Wow.
I immediately roll out of the ring because the only thing I remember was just seeing stars everywhere, like just
Mm,
yellow, white, bright dots everywhere. And I took the count out, and obviously everyone knew, like, oh, something's not right here. So,
yeah.
um, I, you know, I laid down for a solid, like, it felt like 45 minutes. Like, I can't move. Like, everything hurts. Like, I can't move, whatever. Eventually, I had like the willpower to, like, with assistance, get up, and I sat in a chair. And for the rest of the story, I just sat there and, like, I'm just in so much pain and just trying to grasp air that, like, I can't even give you like a pain scale because, like, it was just like everything was hurting so bad, like you almost felt numb.
Mm,
Like it was so bad that, like, you just didn't, like, know where, where the pinpoint. Um, but so I was in Pennsylvania when this happened, so I was a long way from home.
yeah.
I think it was 8 hours, I remember. And you know, I'm outside, my home area. I get, they offered an ambulance. I said, no, I don't want a bill on that, on me. I don't want a bill on anyone. I like, I'll drive there. Like, you're not driving there.
Yeah.
So there was a local guy there, the Whisperer.
Oh,
He's a local,
wow.
he's a local guy that's down there.
Is he
And
still wrestling, do you know?
I hope he is,
Yeah.
because he had so much potential. But he didn't know me from a hole in a wall. We had
Hmm.
met that day, and not only did he personally drive me there, eventually, Drew Cordeiro, Chris Dickinson met me up, like, once the show was over, and everything was taken care
Hmm.
of. But, like, he stood with me for 8 hours before I was brought into a room, because that's how long it took for me to get into a room. He stood with me the entire time.
Wow.
Didn't know, that doesn't know me from a hole in a wall, but, like, that's, to me, that represents brotherhood.
Hmm.
That represents that bond that, like, not everybody can, like, explain with wrestling. And, like, that camaraderie, that pure passion for wrestling. Again, he didn't know me, he didn't have to stay, but he was like, all right, like, I'm gonna stay with you. And yeah, you know uh yeah, so that injury was, I didn't know how severe it was at the time,
Hmm.
because I knew, as soon as they brought me in the room, they said, hey, both your lungs have collapsed, we got to perform surgery on you right now.
Yeah.
And then, like, they literally cut me open. There's a picture on the GoFundMe that was started, that, like, someone took, and I was, like, literally cut open with tubes in my lungs. They were literally inflating oxygen into me because I
Wow.
was not breathing on my
Yeah.
own, not very successfully.
Wow.
But yeah, so, broken collarbone, four ribs, and both my lungs were collapsed. And
Wow.
then that one match, um, I definitely went back home. I think I was there for about 4 days. I was in the hospital for 4 days before my wife and my parents, drove down and picked me up, and, they brought me home. Um, then, I had to get, I had to get a surgery, which I have a plate here now. I have a metal
Hmm.
plate that's right here. And the whole recovery time, from it happened in January, and then I pretty much was, like, from outside my shoot job and everything, like, wasn't doing anything. From January to about June was the total recovery time between, like, surgery and physical therapy, before I was, like, you know, actually ready to live again and, like, go back to work. And, you know, I was very questionable wrestling with that, obviously,
Yeah.
because, like, that was, again, I think I'm indestructible. Like, I've
Hmm.
never, I've never gotten seriously hurt, and then that one shot, I broke half my body. It's like,
Wow.
I joke about it now because I'm very thankful, because, like, the reality of it was, the doctor came to me and said, hey, based on where you broke, where the break happened, if that individual was 1 inch closer to you, we wouldn't be having this conversation, and he would have landed
Wow.
directly on your neck, and you would have been gone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's one of those, lessons that you learn, that, the older you get, you're not indestructible, and,
Hmm.
healing factors take longer, and, all these things that come with that. Um, yeah, it was a very scary moment for me, and, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to wrestle again.
Yeah.
In hints of the stage of my career that I'm in now. I guess, some people, I don't know if I would consider myself like part-time by any means, but like,
Mm,
I basically have this philosophy where I tell all promoters, because like we talked about before, I would actively seek bookings and I would
mm,
message people and I would like say, hey, if I want to do this. And now my stance is simply, hey, listen, I'm available. If you'd like to use me, great, we can talk. If not, it's not a big deal,
yeah,
because like, you know, 40 years old, going to be, 41 as of this, coming soon. And so, like it's one of those things where like I still love wrestling. I still love
yeah.
to do it. I'm just not that weekend warrior anymore. And
Mm,
that's not a knock for anyone that is, because I love watching to see what everyone does. And I love seeing all the boys and girls that are, wrestling. I still love wrestling. I still like to watch all the product as much as I can and see what people are putting out there and, like all these different guys. Like because there's a lot of guys that like I really admired. Um, One guy that I'll bring up real quickly was Alec Price.
yeah. Talk about
Be
wrestling him.
oh God, yeah, let's do that. So again, I'm a student of wrestling, and
Mm,
he was one of those individuals that beyond began to showcase because of his abilities, and he's a New England kid, so naturally I have a soft spot for him. I want to
mm,
see everyone be successful, especially guys from New England.
yeah.
So wrestling him, oh man, like I'm gonna give Teddy Goods props for that, because he was the one that actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, if you're really interested in wrestling him," I was very vocal about it, like online,
Mm,
about him like being like a very talented guy, and how he was showcased. And I forget how the exact topic came up, but for a short period of time, there was small conversations about having the current generation of Beyond Wrestling guys face the older generation of Beyond Wrestling guys. And
really? Wow.
I just kind of threw that out there. I was like, well, oh, listen, like if you want to make this happen, I'm available,
Hmm.
right? And then like I don't even think it was like 24 hours where Teddy goes like, hey, listen, like I can make this happen if you're interested. Like, of course I'm interested in making
Yeah.
this happen. So we go to Live Pro Wrestling,
His
and
second ever show, he booked that match.
his second ever
Live
show.
pros. Yeah, I was there ringing the bell. It was his second ever show.
Oh man, that I
Yeah.
didn't know. That's cool. That's
Yeah.
very cool. Um, so wrestling Alec Price. One thing I gotta commend him for was like we had like a private conversation before, and I won't go into all the
Mm,
details. But one of the things that really that because I know I'm older than him, significantly older than him. But he actually looked at me and was like, I looked at you as one of the OGs of New England.
wow.
And I'm like,
Nice.
wow, man, like I don't like if you're gonna talk Mount Rushmore of New England guys, like I personally don't think like I'm on there. But like, like for him to even say that for someone that's like, up and coming and
Hmm.
like really doing great things all over the country, like that was like really humbling. I was like, dude, like that means so much for me. Like, and thank you so much. And like, the match we had was like a lot of fun because again, like I know he can go. And I
Hmm.
was like, "Hey, man, like if you're willing to, like, I'll keep up with you as best as I can." And like he was like, "Yeah," and we had a great fun match. Really enjoyed, really enjoyed working with him. Just as good as everyone says he is, and above and beyond. Like all the clips that I see him like doing is it's wild to me. Like he's a very innovative individual, and that's
Hmm.
like what I really like about him. He really like I think he showcases intensity in a different, unique way that a lot of guys don't. And it's
Hmm.
not a knock to anyone that, because plenty of people can be intense, but like he's just like, like how can you explain like Alec Price? And one of the things that for me is his intensity.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Anthony, so we talk about the injury, and you don't even know at one point you're coming back to pro wrestling. We could see it in this whole interview, your passion for pro wrestling. So, since coming back, did you like have any goals, or are you just doing it for the love of pro wrestling?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. There's a
Mhm.
lot of love to it. But like I did kind of have like a small checklist of individuals that I was like, hey, if this opportunity comes about, like, AJP was somebody that like I remember literally being like him as a little kid, like a teenager running around in his dad's ring, like all the secret shows, and
Yeah,
being like a really big CM Punk fan, which who wasn't? Let's
yeah,
be real.
yeah.
He CM Punk's awesome. Um, but like so like he was someone that like I was like, hey, like I would love to to do that. Stephen Lust was another individual that I actively seeked out and was like, hey, because he was a tag team specialist, kind of like right around the time like I got injured, like that was like his main thing.
Mhm.
And like not only did he branch out and become a singles competitive, but like he really excelled and like really grew and like it was having like these like really like memorable matches. And I'm like,
Mhm.
dude, like, that's an individual that like really like, took the time to learn and get better and evolve and like really put a lot of time into it because, like just like anything, like the more time you put into anything, the better it is you're going to get at. But it was also the like commitment inside the ring and outside the ring. It wasn't just running the ropes and training this and that. It was like, having those conversations with the veterans that like I saw from him from the corner of my eye. I was like, okay, like he's very eager to do this, And AJP, growing up in wrestling and his dad and the RWA group, which I love personally.
Yeah.
Like those were two like guys that like I actively seeked out and in both cases, I had the opportunity to have those singles matches at Proving Ground with Todd. Um, you know, so I'm always, thankful for that because like um not not everyone gets to like, write their own path, right? Because that's
Mhm.
not like, when you're on the independent level, you kind of, you work your way up, but like, I don't ever want to feel like I'm throwing my vet card out and say, this is what I want to do. I'm not doing it at all. Like,
Yeah.
no, like I've done plenty of shows for Proven Ground and, I've done plenty of shows for RWA and it wasn't just like I'm doing this for nothing. Like I'll do whatever you ask me to do if you want me there.
Mhm.
But the like those two individuals I brought up because, like watching them from a younger age and kind of grow to the performance they are now, it's awesome. So like, that's where, the passion for me still wanting to wrestle comes in, but then also, to have like a chance to maybe share a little bit of wisdom that I've learned a lot of the way and just kind of like give back. We're
Yeah.
talking about AL Fox and just kind of give back. If somebody, getting a win over me, like one of my more favorite moments was, again, we talked about Stephen Luss, but me and Kellen were the RWA Tag Team Champions at the time. We wrestled him and Nick Marchand, and it was an honor to drop the belts to them because like that was kind of like how I felt like, all right, let's propel this team. Stephen Less, who's already have a very rich history with RWA, but now he has a storyline with Nick Marchand to kind of like, turn things around. He was like a heel character. Now he's like a good, so we like propel him. And I like, Nick, because he's an individual who's been around for a long time. He's stuck with it. He's tried to get better. And so
Mhm.
like anytime I see like real dedication to the craft and people like really put in dedication and like the RWE group as a whole
Yeah.
remind me so much of my RDW group is where like as a whole they wanted to get better. They have so many like family like moments together and they want to grow the promotion together. So, like it's really I can't even put the words into it because it's so emotional when you're talking
Mhm.
about it. But like but that's why it gets me so choked up speaking of the RWA group because like that's what I see in them. So like I'll always work there if the opportunity is there.
Yeah.
So
So, oh,
yeah, no, you can go.
well, I was just gonna say that match for RWA Legacy, you and Kellen against Marchand and Lust. I've said it when I interviewed Lust and Marchand. That was my favorite match of the night for me.
That's wow. That's really cool. Because there were certainly a lot of very good matches on that. I mean,
Yeah.
Legacy, right? Like they
Yeah.
they go all out, and there's a lot
Yeah.
of fun matches with that. But yeah, that match like was certainly memorable for me because again, for me, it's like a give back moment.
Mm.
It's like me like trying to help propel like those guys and just do that. So yeah, like that match is very special for that reason. And like yeah, like I'm very
Yeah.
thank you for saying that because like that's awesome for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So another thing you talk about sharing wisdom and giving back. So what was it like? I seen this after it was posted. I wish I could have gone and learned from you. What was it like doing a seminar for TCW? Because I remember I think I was talking. I might have been Isaac. Somebody was talking about it, and they said how much they learned from you.
Yeah, yeah. He was the kind of the individual that kind of like wanted to like really like put it all together.
Mm,
And so like I got in contact with Justin, the the kid that
yeah.
that runs that place. And it was an opportunity where I said, hey, I have no problem, if you want to like get a class together, like I'll give you like a. And I was really, with seminars, like you really want to be like, for me anyway, my standpoints as far as seminars, it's for me, it's not a money grab, right?
Mm,
Because like, whereas like the information could help like a younger, you know, group get better. I wanted to like say, hey, like I'll offer my services and run a little class for you, but like I want this to be a benefit for you.
mm,
So like what can we do to make this a benefit for you? So like, he did the advertising, did, and what was really cool about that experience in particular, of course, like, aspiring, young, wrestlers wanting to get better. But for me personally, my second oldest, Gabriel, was a part of that seminar.
nice.
He's, he keeps talking about wanting to be, a wrestler and stuff like that. And like, he actually showed up. He brought one of his friends with him, So I was like, all right, like you can come with me, but like, I'm gonna make you do everything, like just because you're my son, like I'm not gonna expect less of you. If anything, I'm gonna expect more of you, right?
Mm,
But so for me that was like a cool like dad moment. And that seminar was like really touching to me because like there was like a good group. I want to say like 8 or 9 other individuals showed up. So like, just for that many to be like even interested and wanted to hear what I want to say or do in front of the ropes was like, really cool, because
yeah.
like it's, especially like that group, like they might not recognize me, but like they'll hear from like, other people and say, oh no, let's let him, go to this class and this seminar. It was a lot of fun. It was
Yeah.
a lot of fun. Sometimes you learn more by teaching,
Mm,
and like it's a great experience, and it was certainly um a nice spot to be in.
yeah. So another thing I'm curious about when we talk about DUI now, when the last time you teamed with whoever, Kellen, or what was the other guy's name? William, was it?
William
William Thorne?
Thorne. Yep.
The last time you teamed with him, how did like DUI end? And then coming back to like I think it was 2022 when it was brought back. What was the conversation like to bring it back?
Um, I mean, so um T Phoenix was the one that kind of, approached both me and Kellen, was like, hey, I have this idea,
Yeah,
to put you guys together. Um, so, like again, like if anyone wants to have me and Kellen team up, like hell yeah,
yeah.
let's do it. Because again, it's like riding a bicycle. You don't get it off. If anything, we try to make it better than,
Mhm.
previously before, you know, and I want to believe, like the pairing us together was to just work with younger tag teams,
Nice.
right? To try to
Yeah,
like maybe have them learn a thing or two, and then at the same time, like we had like a really good like run there. And I'm not gonna say it's over because you never know when it's over.
yeah,
Like just because we lost the tag titles doesn't mean we'll never team up in RW again.
yeah.
Obviously, Kellen's still doing his singles things, and from time to time I'll do my singles thing. So we don't know what the future holds.
Mhm.
But that's kind of like how like that conversation came up, was T Phoenix being like, hey, I want to do this. You guys interested? Hell yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
And the run we had was, just that. It was like a lot of fun. We had like a lot of chance to like, work with, like a lot of younger kids, and, have like pretty entertaining matches with them. And, around this time last year, I actually won the tag team titles on my birthday weekend. So
yeah.
that was terrific. That was a wonderful moment that just kind of aligned with the stars. And, T Phoenix, like, offering me, which was, very gracious of him. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how that whole thing came about. And to touch on like how it kind of like branded off again, I spoke how Kellen Thomas and William Thorne, like they were more like the tag team. They were
Yeah.
the more that kind of like traveled together. And the only reason why it stopped really is because Will got married and he moved to Florida.
Oh, okay.
Like
Yeah.
that was, I'm sure like if he stood in the area, he still would have wrestled and did everything like that. But he went on and he started his life outside of New England and with his significant now his wife, excuse me. So he has a family out there now, and it's that I think that's the only actual reason. Like
Yeah.
you'd probably get a better answer from Kellen, but
Yeah.
like that's kind of when like their tag team run kind of like stopped because hey, I'm moving to Florida, life, events and stuff. So let's have this last big hurrah, So I think that's how like the tag team DUI disbanded.
Yeah. So you mentioned it. How did it feel like? I believe it was January 13th. How did it feel like to win the RWA tag team titles and RWA a cut above against DCMC?
Oh my God, it was awesome. Like
Yeah.
it was tremendous. Like I have a large amount of respect, for both of those individuals, you know what I mean? Because again, you want to talk about Mike Montero. He was another guy that was just like, you know, not say just like wrestling, but like again, with everyone with the RWA group, like, man, he's another guy that like a lot of people in that class, but like, he was another guy. I sound like a broken record player now, where he just continuously got better and got better
Mm,
and got better. And so, and then his tag team partner, like he came to me afterwards on the side and like a real nice touching moment before our match was like, hey man, like I want you to know I went to those a lot of those fete shows and watched you and like you really inspired me and like to
nice.
hear that like in my stage now with a lot of these guys, like it's humbling for them to
Yeah.
even go out of their way to say that to me. Um, one I let's yeah, there was something that kind of popped in my head
Yeah.
because we were talking about the live pro wrestling show
Yeah.
with Alec Price.
Yeah.
Anthony Green was also on that show,
Yep.
and he made a speech at the end of the show, in which Anthony Green, we know Anthony Green, how
Yeah.
successful he is. He also made a similar gesture towards me on that same show at the very end that just like completely got me blushed because I didn't know he was going to do that. I had
Mm,
no even clue that he would like, you know, Anthony Green is like incredible
yeah.
and like, so I think that's like in the stage of the career that I'm in now, like to hear those like stories and for people to like you could come to me and I remember this and you inspire me to do that and like you were very outspoken about your life choices and how it doesn't affect you and family and how
Mm,
I'm able to like, wrestle Big Frank was a guy from RWA that was like, came to me aside, was like, hey, like I think it's really cool that you have this family, you're still wrestling. I'm a dad, and to see you do it, like that's really cool that it can be done. Which
yeah.
again, with the proper, spouse and partner, like that's the biggest thing I will always stress with people is having, like support. If you don't have the support from your spouse, it won't work.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, so I think like that's the best way I could sum up the stage of my career now is just to try to constantly give back.
yeah. So when we talk about coming back, do you like have any goals or anything in 2025 you want to do, or do you just love pro wrestling to keep doing it?
Ah, God. I love pro wrestling and I want to keep doing it.
Mm,
Like I have selfish goals that
yeah.
like I would love to happen. Of course, like they're all like, just dreams that if they can happen, that could be great.
Yeah.
But like, there are a few handful opponents that I've mentioned previously, and I'll mention again right now that if it were to happen, like it'd be great, which I don't know. One name that gets mentioned around is Maverick Wild. I'm not sure what his health condition is right now. I know there
Yeah.
was a period of time where he considered it, and I'm not sure if that is well past its way. But that was somebody in the early stages of my career. I used to send him videos of my matches and ask him to critique them.
Wow.
And he was actually the guy who gave me credit. The move I call the blood drop, the Meteora, the double knees.
Mm,
He's the individual that actually credited me as saying, "Hey, like," because I would do it as like a random like move in a match, like meant nothing. Like I remember doing like drop down leapfrog, and that was like my drop kick was like that
yeah.
maneuver. And he always thought you make it look very impactful, and like, why don't you make that as a finish? So that's why I started doing that as a finish because of this is Maverick Wild we're talking about,
Yeah.
right? So, selfishly, he'd be an individual that if, an opportunity came up, that'd be great. Um, I missed an opportunity when I got hurt.
Mm.
At one point when I was wrestling like full time with Lucky Pro Wrestling, they were actually going to pair me with Eddie Edwards.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a missed opportunity that I had, that I'd missed. And if that somehow were to ever come up, like Eddie
Mm.
Edwards would be like right up there. And then there's an individual that's like making his way around New England again, which, was a huge inspiration, for us in New England was John Walters.
Nice. Yeah.
He's somebody that's, kind of like making his, like his little come, and he does that from time to time.
Yeah.
He kind of comes back. He like sprinkles some matches here and there, and a guy from New England, had great big things with a Ring of Honor. Really like brought like prestige to the Pure Championship when he held it. So like I have a soft spot for New England guys that like,
Yeah.
that make it big. And like, we just talked about like Eddie Edwards and John Walters. Maverick Wild was just a pioneer of like the New England area. He's like right up there with Brickhouse Baker, if you ask me.
Nice.
Just guys that have like a lot of like, prestige behind them. So, like, but those are things. But like, as far as other goals in 2025, God, I mean, you know, I hope there's actually one more selfish goal, and I've never shared the story with anyone.
Yeah.
So,
We get the
um,
scoop here.
you get the scoop. So hear me out.
Yeah.
There's this match structure. I'm sure that name could use work, right?
Mm.
But at some point in my career, before it's all over,
Yeah.
I want to I'll explain the rules. So like
Mm.
my thing, it's a stone iron match.
Hmm.
Okay. So we know an Iron Man match, right? You
Yeah.
wrestle for an hour and the most pinfalls, wins the match.
Yeah.
In my version, the stone iron, you
Mm.
wrestle for an hour and then the bell rings. Now the first fall
Wow.
now the first fall wins.
Yeah. That's genius.
Again, I mean that's something I'd love to do. I don't know if it ever come about or
Yeah.
how it would come about, but like I've never mentioned this story publicly. I
Yeah.
mean to close friends and family I have because everyone
Yeah.
knows like, I'm a cardio freak and I just wrestle for days and like I just run the ropes forever and stuff like that. But that's always been like a thing like, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Because like to my knowledge, something that never happened.
No. Where'd you think of that?
I just again like trying to be a student of wrestling and trying to think outside the box and like different things. Like Proving Grounds had a similar thing where like their title got vacant and like I shared a private message of like, a different type of match structure because,
Mhm.
different match structures it's like unique for the fans. Like,
Oh yeah.
fans want to see something like, you know, a lot of wrestling is like the same, same rules, same this and that, so like it was just kind of like let's do a little something a little different.
Nice.
So that's kind of, like I love the Iron Man match. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels is my all-time favorite.
Mm.
Right behind that it's got to be, Eddie Edwards and Biff Busick. Their Iron Man matches, whew, oh my
Yeah.
God, like, whew, that's a roller coaster ride. It
Yeah.
really is. So like I was like, I love Iron Man matches, but like, how can you make it different? And like,
Mm.
like you could do different things in the Iron Man match so they each stand out.
Mm.
But I was like, here's my concept. Like,
Yeah.
like let's go for an hour and now the bell rings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if it ever happened, but you got the scoop for that.
Yeah, that's crazy. And another name you mentioned, I just recorded with on Friday, John Walters, man.
Awesome. I
Yeah,
gotta watch it. I gotta
yeah,
watch it.
he rules. Like a lot of the stuff like you talked about, he kind of has like the same mindset. Like he loves pro wrestling, but like it blows my mind with him how he could like take like 5, 6 months out of wrestling and then just come back to like where he picked off.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
And the guy's still in like tremendous shape and
yeah,
like he's always ring ready. And that's how I like to feel like I might not be a weekend warrior and stuff like that, but I always want to be ring ready. I
mm,
always like, want to, like be able to just go and go and go and go. And, like I try to take my health like as seriously as I can be and try to be fit, not just for wrestling, but for my own, personal reasons.
yeah,
Wrestling is a huge part of that, of course, because, it's just, it's part of the gig, right? Is to try to be, active enough that you can perform in the ring,
yeah,
so that's watching a guy like John Walters is like, yeah, like, where's the fountain of youth, man?
Yeah.
Where are you hiding it?
Yeah. So another thing I'm curious about, since coming back to pro wrestling, or even before the injuries, what matches of your career do you think really do stand out?
Like all time, or just
Yeah.
my
Even before the injury and then coming back from the injury.
okay. Well, that's a loaded question there. Um, I mean, I, phew, like I think the easiest answer, because like I kind of touched upon it like earlier in this
Yeah.
podcast, is like, if I want to showcase like the best of Anthony Stone, I'm gonna pop in like, all right, here's a Dave Cole,
Yeah. Yeah.
me and Dave Cole, so that's kind of the easiest answer. I always look at the match with AR Fox as like a standout match for me, because that
Mm,
that really helped propel me, and like that conversation, you know with like, he might be like one of the like better known guys in New England. I don't like to say like I'm one of the best, because I try to stay as humble as I can, but for the most part, like, those opportunities allowed those conversations to took place,
yeah.
because of that match with AR Fox. So we'll always look at that. um you know and then, the night that me and Kellen won the tag team titles, like, I remember hugging him right before we came out there. I was like, hey, man, like, I love you for this. Thank you for still wanting to do this with me. And I love the fact we're still able to do this. And he's like, it's great that we're still doing DUI all these years later. Let's go
Mm.
out and kill it. So like that's another like, you know, um, memorable match for me. And yeah, I just, in 2025, I hope to create more memorable memories, not just for myself, but obviously for the fans, because that's why we do this.
Yeah. So another thing I'm curious about throughout your whole career, who are some of your biggest mentors or people you learned the most from in wrestling?
People I learned the most from. All right, so Mike Edwards,
Hmm.
without a doubt. I mentioned Andre Silva. Um, I have to throw in Brickhouse Baker, you
Nice.
know. Um, I have to give credit um to, let's see here. I mean, can't believe I'm drawing a blank right now. Well, I mean, because like there's so many people that were
Yeah.
influenced, but as far as like learning the most
Yeah.
from, I mean, I think Quackenbush definitely goes up
Yeah.
there. He at one point joked to me, he's like, yeah, I think you attended more seminars than like I've ever had.
Wow.
Because like there was a period of time where I was kind of like not following him, but like anytime he was in New England, I was going to them. And like
Nice.
one time I even hosted one for him at my old wrestling facility that I
Nice.
mentioned. So like those are, I mean, Paul London, we talked about him. Um, AR Fox helped me learn a lot.
Yeah.
Like you take a little bit of everything that you work with other individuals, and you mold it into the experience, and the art that we make.
Hmm.
So, but that's probably like the top five people I would say.
Yeah. So before we get to the last question, there's one more topic that came up that I was going through Facebook that I came across that I want to hear your version again. You posted, I forgot what month it was. How did you come across the chair from Beyond Wrestling?
Oh,
That was cool to see.
that was awesome to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. I was just like, scrolling through Facebook,
Mm.
and the individual that was, selling it was just listed it up, and I privately messaged him and was like, "Hey man, like if this is still available, I would love to take it off your hand, because, like being there and like having that, like it was something that like I definitely, and I'm not like a big antique person. One thing that I will say, and
Yeah.
um that I am a collector of, is fan art. And I promise you, Chris, to this day, the fan
Yeah.
art that you provided for me at the XWA show, I still have it.
Nice. Yeah,
Like
I have
that is
yours in a binder somewhere signed up.
awesome, awesome. But like, so like, I don't really collect a lot of things in wrestling.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have, but like I just, you live and learn, right?
Yeah.
But like, like fans, like people that like the from fans, that's a whole different thing. Like I'll
Mm,
gladly take that and say, hey, thank you for taking the time to draw this for me or make this or whatever it might be. Like there's
yeah,
a nice little binder behind me that I can,
nice.
showcase. But like with that chair, I felt like, really like obliged to like actively seek it out because like yeah, like I was everyone that signed that chair, I was like I was there and like if anything, like I was hoping I was like if anything's gonna be left behind, like as far as Beyond Wrestling is concerned, like I hope I was considered one of the building blocks
Yeah,
of Beyond Wrestling.
yeah,
And so like I wanted to take that as like a little memento from my time there. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? So like I'm glad I was able to get it for sure.
Nice. Yeah, you mentioned those drawings. I was talking to one David Baker earlier, and the nice guy he is, he was the reason I stopped those. He was like, "You're a sophomore in high school drawing
No.
pictures that looked like they were from Helen Keller." So I'm like, "All right, pal, that's when
Oh
they were gonna
Jesus.
stop there." But like we talked about, like standing out in wrestling, like when I was a kid, like that's what I was known for. I wanted to do something to get known for. So no matter if they're done by Helen Keller or not, I feel like they did what I wanted. But Anthony
Yeah.
Stone, I want to thank you for doing this. However, I've ended every interview the same. The day it's all done, which I hope it's not anytime soon. What do you want Anthony Stone's legacy in wrestling to be?
Anthony Stone, my legacy in wrestling to be. Um, I just hope that I'm remembered as an individual that somebody can learn from, and I hope that I could be um, remembered for being a positive role model. That's what I hope to be remembered as, like, because like there's so many wrestlers come and go, and you might not always get like positive experiences with working with someone, and I pride myself in like I've never really seriously injured someone.
Mhm.
So like I take it very seriously. So I just hope like that's what I'm remembered for.
Yeah. Well, Anthony Stone, I want to thank you for doing this, and I want to thank you for everything. Like I said, man, it was crazy. Sixth, seventh grade, going to the shows, getting to see you, and then in school talking about all these wrestlers I got to see. And then all these years later, I forgot your first match back. Was that 2022 for RWA or something like that? And then I get to call it in 2023.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nailed it. Nailed
Thank
it.
you for everything, man. I appreciate you, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me once again.
Thank you, Anthony Stone. Thank you, everybody, for watching this episode. This was Best for Business.